Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is David Premi. I have 2 children who are millennials, but that's about as close as I get, as someone so eloquently pointed out. I have built my architectural practice in Hamilton over 12 years. Particularly interested in development opportunities along the LRT significantly over the past year since Council gave the final support to the project, accepting the infrastructure money from the province. Their interest is emboldened by the fact that 45 times first phase of its principal competitors, Kitchener-Waterloo, to understand the economic impact of an important On February 14th of this year, the Waterloo Record released some data that has been collected and analyzed since the approval of the KW LRT line in 2011. Construction of new residential units within 800 meters of the planned LRT line soared 66% after the Council approved LRT. The number of units being provided in KW rose from 10% to 25% within the space of 1 year. And this has been sustained, whereas in 2016, KW now produces a 30% share of all new residential units in the region, and a train hasn't even run on the tracks yet. And it's not just residential development. On January 30th, CTV News Kitchener reported on the unprecedented sale of 7 downtown, rapid growth of the local tech sector, similar to what Hamilton offers. Regional Chair Ken Sealing agrees, saying similar effects are being seen all along the LRT corridor. Hamilton is a larger community than KW and is in a more strategic location. I can only conclude that the economic upturn in Hamilton would be larger than experienced in Waterloo. Billions of dollars of development activity will not only create many jobs and economic stimulus, but will also fill the tax coffers with new commercial and residential units along the LRT line. This is not only good for those who actually use the LRT. This new prosperity will help to protect all Hamiltonians from further residential tax rate increases, service cuts, and help us to. I'm concerned that any threat to the solid council support for this project could threaten several major projects that we currently have in the office. A setback at this time could threaten my ability to continue to create jobs, or even worse, force me into a situation where some staff may have to be made redundant. And I'm not alone. Support for the project has been publicly expressed by the leaders of Hamilton's anchor institutions and businesses. And I have a long list here, many of which have already been listed by Keenan and many other speakers, so I won't go on. The list represents hundreds of thousands of jobs. The people on the list represent a very large proportion of our, arguably half of our labor force in Hamilton. So it's indisputable that there is very strong and sustained support from the business community. So today I am here to thank you, Council, for continuing to show the bold leadership that has gotten us to this point. I ask you to stay the course in creating prosperity and jobs and tax revenue that is already manifesting itself, significantly influenced by our commitment to higher order transit. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Councillor Farr.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dave, not only for the presentation today, but for all of your award-winning work and your other work here in our core and coming home from Toronto to be part of the wonderful transformation that we're seeing in this city and that has been supported by Council today. Through you, Chair, the environmental assessment addendum that's before us has many attachments, and of those many attachments, there's a lot of reference to TOD, or transit-oriented development, and that's a prevailing theme with what Dave has just shared. We ourselves have received correspondence from developers behind what we know of, hundreds of millions of dollars in development, who are supportive of LRT. We'll obviously be able to remind the public about that later on in our discussion if we need to. But that said, you are an architect, David. And does that give you any special insights into transit-oriented development specific to your profession through you, Chair?
I wouldn't say special insights, but it does allow me a privileged position to see, almost to be clairvoyant and to see things before they happen, because I get involved very, very early in the process. I get involved with real estate people, with development, with investors, to help to participate in the incubation of projects. Has been difficult to start in the past, but I can barely keep up with the interest that there is in Hamilton, and I have to say that many of these developers, and I have pursued developers directly from Kitchener-Waterloo because I know they're interested in developing cities. So as an agent of change, I'm trying to put players together and create opportunities for these people that want to invest here. But the biggest marketing tool that I have is the vision that Council has given on higher order transit. Without that, these people will not be interested in developing here. And I know that sounds like an absolute statement, but I'm on the ground, I'm talking to a lot of people. The commitment to higher order transit is a really big deal to these people.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and I've yet to meet or talk to anybody at the front of any development ideas, large or small, at least in Ward 2, when we sit down with staff before they ever do any formal consultation, and usually architects are part of that at that table, that is in support of this particular project. They see all the benefits. So I appreciate that, and of course, to reiterate, we have hundreds of millions of dollars in investment by LRT Pro developers that are on the record. So it's appreciated, that particular statement. I'm glad I asked the question, because you really are, and most architects are at the table very early on, and in fact before they're at the table with the councillor and the staff, they tend to be doing the kinds of things that you're doing. So it's much appreciated, and I appreciate your work in our renewal efforts since you have come back to staff through you, Chair. Did you say you have now?
We have 11 now.
And you're hiring through you, Chair?
Trying to hire actively, yeah.
Fantastic. Seedworks is great. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any more speakers. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, David. You're an architect. In Kitchener, in the development, sort of the EA process, and that is, when we talk about climate change, we're also talking about ensuring that we have the capacity to deal with the stormwater and runoffs, ensuring that it gets treated before it flows into the harbour. Apparently on King Street right now, it's only got a 2-year capacity, meaning, and one of the shifts would be that any development coming in would have to build big storage tanks to take their share of water that's generated as a result of the development. Is that what's happening in Kitchener as well? Is that cost being borne by the developer in Kitchener, or is that a requirement in Kitchener?
Through the chair, I'm not familiar with that particular issue in Kitchener, but virtually all of our projects in Hamilton have to have storage for stormwater built in, whether they're associated with LRT or not, and that is borne by the developer. That's a development cost.
And my understanding is the rationale, because obviously most of what we're designing now is, and certainly on the mountain and elsewhere, is a 100-year storm. So the standards are much more significant. In the lower city, along that corridor, my understanding is a 2-year storm. So that's a significant responsibility or cost that's being imposed onto the development. And I'm curious, because it is a different scenario, as I understand it, than Kitchener, what, if any, impacts those additional costs may have on that investment?
Through the chair, the cost of stormwater management and on-site storage is a very common and typical and expected cost to be borne in a development of any kind. So that's a typical part of any project. I don't think it would be particular to Kitchener or Hamilton or anywhere else.
So a lot of buildings in Hamilton right now in the lower city have storage?
Not the older ones, but the new ones certainly do, because our stormwater system is is almost at capacity. So we have to retain water on site and release it slowly back into the stormwater system so that we don't overwhelm the system. I mean, that's just a fact of life in Hamilton for any building now.
So my next question is, and this is born out of the studies from the Federal Treasury Reserve in regards to economic uplift, commercial uplift, and even along the line where you might have some stations to do very well, and you can have stretches that don't do very well, in fact have a negative impact. So when we get back into what you've put out there, I'm trying to understand, in Kitchener, for example, one of the arguments in these reports basically said there's not a net assessment benefit or economic benefit to the city. Doesn't mean there's not a shifting. So in Kitchener, is there a net assessment growth in the city as a result of the investments you have identified, or is absorbed as just a reshift in regards to facilitating the excitement around the LRT?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but I think when there is development, there's more tax. So taxes are collected that go into the coffers that help to fund the entire city.
Let me try and make it a little simpler. Okay. The average assessment growth in the city of Hamilton is 2%. 1% is generated about a 1% assessment growth. In that you automatically have 3%. There's a shift. You're still going to probably see that 2% growth. It's just where that development is taking place.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Hamilton, respecting LRT. Come down, Ann.